This is Monsteropolis episode. I've never done an episode number. Why did I try to do that? A show about anomalies, legends, and monsters. I'm one of your hosts. My name is Seth Breedlove, and joined as always by my pal, Mark Matsky.
Hello there.
Hi.
Hi.
Hey there. Okay, so we just got back from filming on the trail of the Lake Michigan Mothman, a movie that has been on our docket since early 2020.
Mm-hmm.
We announced the poster. We announced the movie during the Kickstarter for last year's project, which is going to be weird because when we finish it, those backers get it, not the 2021 backers. Some of them, there's crossover, obviously, but it's just going to be a strange project because it's been in the works for so long. We didn't get to make it, obviously, last year because Chicago was kind of in the middle of a lot of the lockdown stuff going on, and we had to be careful traveling too much and especially into Chicago. It would have been next to impossible to get like witnesses and stuff to talk to us. So
not like the Adirondacks.
Right. No. No, it's kind of the opposite.
Yeah.
Although we did, well, we can talk about that, but we only really spent maybe 15 hours, 20 hours in we spent about 22 hours in Chicago, like in the city.
Right.
The rest of the time we were in kind of like suburban areas or areas kind of like Wadsworth, like where we were a little more secluded. Last day was spent in Indiana, which we should talk about a little bit. I heard the story of Diana of the Dunes, which is a cool mythology.
Very cool
legend there. A lot of time, not a lot of time spent driving back and forth between places. So that was kind of nice because I feel like the last few movies have spent a lot of time in cars.
Yes.
But yeah, I don't know.
Well, I've got a place to start.
Yeah.
If you want to. This was something that was referenced in the last episode, but you said when you got there was a disaster right out
immediately.
What was that all about?
We packed light for this trip because we had a small. I don't know if you're aware of the rental car shortage happening.
No.
Rental cars there's when the COVID hit, all the rental car places sold off their fleets. And when they reordered their fleets, they've placed the order for more cars because of the microchip shortage. Rental car places are extremely understocked on rental cars. Mm-hmm. So rental car prices have gone skyrocket. So basically I rented a QX80 or something. I couldn't even afford or think about affording a we normally rent a premium SUV, which is the bigger size. We always need that trunk space in back. We couldn't get it because it was seriously going to be like $2,700 or something for 5 days. So so they rented us a QX80 or an XQ80. I can't remember. It's a full size SUV, but it did not have that much room. I mean, it wasn't like a huge vehicle. So we packed real light. We loaded everything in the car and we drive to Chicago and we get into where we were staying, which was Chauffeur. No, see, I'm confused now. Schaumburg. That's it. Schaumburg. Yeah. So we stayed in Schaumburg, and we get into the Airbnb. It's a nice Airbnb. We start unloading gear because we're gonna do. It's almost time to start shooting with Tobias and Emily. Mm-hmm. So we start getting the gear out, and someone says, "Where's the cameras?" And I'm like, they should be in the backpack. And as I'm saying this, I'm like, they're not in the backpack. Like, it's in my head immediately. Oh, I know exactly where they are, and they're sitting on the floor in the office. And so what happened is we packed everything in a backpack and another backpack. So we had a backpack for batteries, and then we had another big backpack that had all our gear. So lenses, anything extra, microphones, all that kind of stuff. So it was basically just those two bags, except we couldn't fit everything in there. So we took the two main cameras, A7S3s, and put them in a hard case. And then when we packed the car, we left the hard case.
Oh my gosh.
And so
you're in the office?
Yeah. So I'm like, I didn't panic. It's weird. I was pretty calm. Yeah. I went outside and just had to think for a minute because I was like, what do we do here? Because we still had cameras. We had the FX3, which is a great camera. It's the new A camera for us. And then we had the A7 III, which is what Aaron was shooting with all of the Discovery trip. It's a nice camera, but it only shoots 8-bit. It doesn't go up to 10-bit like the new ones do, like the FX3 or the A7S IIIs. So I basically just formulated a plan. I was like, look, we're not renting a bunch of cameras. Because Zach's like, I think we should rent cameras. And I'm like, we can't really afford to start renting cameras out here. So we shot, the FX3 became Dave's camera. It was originally supposed to be mine. I was just going to film with it. And then Zach went to the A7 III. And then we had 3 of those Sony Handycams with us. So those kind of got split up between Aaron and I. And then whenever we would have a minute, I would shoot what I could with the Handycam. But that was our disaster. And people might be like, well, it sounds like you had a lot of cameras. The reason that becomes an issue is even though I'm on camera a lot and on the trail I'm shooting as much as I can. And I would say of all the shooters on SDM, I tend to shoot the most B-roll because other people are usually doing things like setting up lights or like getting ready for interviews or doing something. And I can just like shoot B-roll. Also, I just like shooting B-roll. Yeah. So I'll go.
You'll just be gone.
I'll just go off shooting B-roll. It's like what I like to do. Like that's what happened when the thing happened. I had left the group and was going off by myself to shoot B-roll around Chicago. Questionable decision given the city, but like that's so normally. So that's the downside to it is like I don't think we got anywhere near as much B-roll as we normally would. Because I wasn't able to shoot as much. Also, the other problem I realized with that is if I don't have a camera in my hand, I feel useless. Absolutely useless. Because everyone's kind of doing stuff. And I feel like I have a camera so I can be doing like I'll be filming someone or shooting stills or whatever. And when I don't have that camera, I feel like I am not serving any kind of purpose. But we soldiered through it. That was like it probably would have been better in the last episode to tell that story just because it kind of played into that interview thing. Just you never have any idea what kind of obstacle or challenge you're going to run into. And sometimes it's caused because of my idiocy.
It's interesting to think of what that might do as far as creativity, like in the edit.
That's what I thought.
Work out. Because it could end up being something, one of those serendipitous things. Just works out well.
I think it will. Just from going through the footage, I think it will work to our benefit. And Dave was in here yesterday because I'm not editing that movie. Dave is, and I was telling him yesterday, like, I feel like on some of our movies, the B-roll almost becomes a crutch because, like, okay, well, I'm gonna jump out of the scene and just show a bunch of B-roll while we talk, and I feel like maybe in this case, use the B-roll a little more sparingly and let it focus on the people that are on camera for a little longer than normal. And so I think Dave will do something really cool with it anyway. So that was the big challenge that we ran into when we got there. We were fine though. Like I said, it was strange, as scary as that is to hear, oh, we forgot the cameras in Ohio.
I half expected you to say somebody came back and got him. When that story started out.
I thought about it. I legitimately thought, like, if I left at that point, I could have driven home in 5 hours and been back there the next morning to go back to shooting. But I would have been dead the remainder of the shoot.
Yeah, you'd have been gone.
The other option would have been to rent from a lens place or a rental place, camera rental. So I started looking those up, and all of them were closed, or you had to drop the camera off on Monday morning. And Monday morning we were going to be in Indiana and on our way back to Ohio from there. So there was just no option. It was like, it just came down to, let's just make this work with these cameras. And when you think about it, having 2 main cameras and then handy cams isn't that far off from what we did with like on the Trail of Bigfoot, The Journey. Because Alex didn't start shooting with the FS7 till like the 4th day or something. And then, like he was just kind of grabbing footage here and there. So you can make it work. And that's what we did. That was probably the biggest disaster we had on the trip. We spent, did you have anything else you wanted to ask specifically about that? I don't know.
About
did I cry?
Disaster?
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you cry?
Did I cry? No. I felt like it for a minute, but like I said, it really was strange. I was fairly calm. Yeah. We just like went into filming with what we had. I feel like even if we had only had the handy cams, we would have tried to make it work. Like it was just that kind of situation.
Right.
But our first day was entirely with Tobias and Emily, and we did that first night. We did a talk, like Heather and I had a talk, and we filmed us talking outside of the house. The house we stayed in there in Schaumburg was pretty cool. Schaumburg is like a more modern area, it looks like, kind of development. Everything that we were in a development neighborhood, so a lot of the houses looked the same and stuff. But the house we were in was pretty cool. It was on the end of the street, so I'm assuming it was there longer than some of the others. But we met up with Tobias and Emily and did like a full day of interviews with them that also intersected with 2 witness interviews. So that was kind of interesting. There's some... My stomach's growling like crazy. There's some facts about this case that came out that I thought were really interesting and things I was just completely unaware of. And I think for a lot of people, that'll be the case. Like, and I don't know how much I want to give away on the show.
Who brought that to light for you?
I think it was interviewing Tobias and Emily.
Okay.
I'll just straight up say, I'm still highly skeptical of the Chicago downtown stuff. But I think I do talk about this in the movie. I think there's 3 different timelines at play. And each timeline is something completely maybe separated from the others. And so what Tobias seems to be looking at is he's taking a lot of reports from like witnesses in suburbs and outlying areas and places around like bordering Lake Michigan maybe. But those sightings to me don't necessarily have any bearing on what was going on in downtown Chicago. And so I thought that was very interesting. All the stuff that we looked at with Tobias was really believable. It's also the first movie where we're really getting into the I hesitate to call it drama, but drama that goes on amongst paranormal researchers.
Yeah.
And
that's just part of the story here, especially.
Yeah. And it goes back and forth between both camps. So we interviewed Tobias and Emily together. Then we interviewed Sam Moranto and Jack Chavez, who were great, like really cool. But they're both opposite ends of the spectrum, right? So Tobias and Emily are very, very much, I guess pro in the camp that this is all a real phenomenon. And then there's Jack and Sam kind of saying, no, it isn't. And in the middle are these witnesses and I think that's an interesting dichotomy too. And then Ellie comes in with this totally different take on it that is very folklore based that I thought was kind of cool. Basically like asking the question, doesn't matter what the truth is. And I thought it was all really interesting.
Yeah.
I had a lot of, I was way more involved in the story than I thought I would be. Because coming into it, I kind of like had my mind made up about what was going on.
Yeah.
But interviewing Tobias and Emily and hearing witness stories kind of changes things for me because it's like these people don't really have a reason to make up the stuff that they're claiming happened. And the biggest strike against the Chicago Mothman sightings are that there were no witnesses. Well, there are witnesses. Like we interviewed 3, no problem. And one of them we tracked down on our own. We didn't have Tobias point us to this guy. In fact, the guy we interviewed in Indiana is friends with Jack. So he's friends with someone in the other camp and sort of anti-Chicago Mothman side. So I don't buy into the fact that there are no witnesses. Now, maybe there aren't any witnesses for the Chicago downtown stuff. So that's what's weird. And I hate to talk about this because it really, like, some of this comes into play in the movie itself. Like to me, it is the perfect example of how the paranormal most often does not fit into a neat box. Like you can't just sort of write everything off as hoax or misidentification or it's real or I'm a believer. Like it just doesn't work that way. And I think you've got people in both camps trying to do just that. Like I think you have people on both sides saying this is all hoax, or everyone saying it's real, it's 100% real. And truth is, like, it's a little bit of both.
Mm-hmm.
That was my read on it.
Yeah. Well, and based on that, then, if you're comfortable getting into this, what are people saying they saw, like from a description standpoint?
Well, I really want to talk about the MUFON stuff because I've got issues with it, just like I've got issues with the like the people that say it's real versus the people that say this isn't real. And when I say this, what I'm referencing when I say this is this particular phenomenon as it relates to Chicago and Chicagoland area.
Yeah,
is what I'm referencing.
Right. So, like from a physical standpoint, what are people saying?
Okay, so the biggest strike is that they kept bringing up to us on the MUFON side. It was like, well, this isn't at all what was seen in Chicago because the most of the sightings don't even have one concrete description. What does that sound like to you? That sounds exactly like Point Pleasant in 1966 and 67 because there wasn't one concrete description of the Mothman then either. Right. So it's a winged humanoid, with red eyes, and then sometimes it's a huge bird, and then other times it's like a pterodactyl looking thing. And the descriptions of the humanoid can be feathered or they can be like leathery bat wings. And it's kind of like all over the map as far as like what people are seeing. And that to me really does sound like Chicago. There are huge red flags relating to the downtown Chicago stuff. Like as far as where the reports are originating, how they're originating, the fact that we don't have witness corroboration. Some of that stuff is pretty important. So, but yeah, they're seeing it runs the gamut what they're seeing.
Now, when you say that, and I'm asking because I don't know the answer to this question. With the downtown sightings, are there any witnesses on record that you can talk to?
As far as I know, when you talk like the Chicago itself, I think there's 3. One of them saw like a praying mantis type creature, which doesn't necessarily fit into the Chicago Mothman stuff. And then there's 2 others. But there's tons of reports. I mean, there's and the big issue for skeptics is they're all originating from 3 sources, and one of those sources is Tobias and Emily. Having said that, I don't really, for me, having talked to them, that doesn't raise any red flags for me as far as them fabricating reports or whatever.
Right.
The other thing, I've spent time with both Tobias and Emily, going all the way back to 2018 when we made Bray Road.
Right.
Was the first time we spent time with them?
Yep.
They're not hoaxing those reports. I don't believe so. But what was your question? I keep getting caught up in my own thoughts on the case.
You answered it, which was what physically are people saying they are seeing or that others are seeing.
Running the gamut of what people are seeing.
Yeah.
And it's not that unusual when we do when we've looked at anything that is a winged creature case.
Yeah.
It never seems to align. And having experienced what I experienced in downtown Chicago that day that we were there, I kind of get it. Because what I saw flew through the sky real fast. I couldn't tell how big it was at the time. And it isn't until later when I'm able to look at the footage that I'm like, okay, here's some distinguishing details, blah, blah, blah. And
okay, so you brought it up. Do you want to, we better get like the full description of this.
Yeah, I don't know how much Dave is going to want to hold for this show, but I do know that the video is going to be like somehow featured in the trailer because it has to be. It's a cool video.
Yeah.
I was outside of our hotel, which was the Congress Plaza Hotel, which turns out is the most haunted place in the state of Illinois. If you go online, look up most haunted place in the state of Illinois, it's the Congress Plaza, supposedly haunted by Al Capone, who stayed there all the time. Weirdly, Capone played into another place we stayed the next day in Porter, Indiana. He used to go to a bar in Porter all the time. We stayed at the Spring Hill Inn or something right next to this bar that Capone used to go to.
There's stories about Capone all
Yeah.
throughout Chicago.
That's what we were making jokes about, was like, why would he haunt this random hotel? And they were like, well, he really liked it. Well, he didn't die there. Like, what? That doesn't even make sense.
His ghost went back there just to hang.
So we're at this hotel, and it was a cool hotel.
Michigan Avenue, right?
Right off Michigan.
Yeah.
Right on Michigan Avenue.
Magnificent mile.
Yeah. Beautiful old building too, just like really cool. I would recommend staying there just because it's cheap, and the rooms we got were pretty cool. Don't stay there at the height of summer. There's no air conditioning.
Wow.
And so even though we were there on cool nights, it was still boiling hot in my room at times.
Yipes.
So we stayed in the Congress Plaza, and super safe area. Like, I don't think there's anything going on down there as far as like crime. It seems pretty safe. Really gorgeous. Like, we went down to we walked down to the lakefront. We're able to shoot back toward the hotel and like walk all around there. We're right down the road from the Bean and all that stuff. But it was that same night we walked around, we got B-roll, and then we went back to the hotel, and everyone kind of went to hang out, and I didn't feel like hanging out, so I grabbed my camera and I headed outside. And this sequence of events is discussed in the movie. We shot a thing where we talk about this.
Yeah.
And all of this, by the way, I realize sounds highly suspicious. So I leave the group and I walked out the side door, which I don't know what that road is. We were trying to figure out. It might be Dearborn. Dearborn's right there. It's a side road. It's not Michigan. But whatever this thing was came from Lake Michigan, over Michigan Ave, and over my head. So I just walked out of the hotel, and I hear flapping, which is what alerted me to something being there. I have my camera on immediately, and then to myself, I muttered, "You have to be kidding me." And I turn, and it's nighttime. It's about 10 o'clock at night. Maybe even later by then, because we'd already gone down to the lakefront and walked back. I'm saying it's around 10 o'clock at night. There's a massive bird of some sort flies over my head low and then streaks toward the sky. And I showed you the video.
Yes.
When you see the video, that thing is at least 20 or 30 yards beyond the end of that building. So it got from where I was outside the building all the way down to the end of that building, and it's way up at that point. It's already gone above the buildings. Very large, very, very, very large bird of some very large thing, winged thing.
Yes.
That I filmed.
The size does not make sense. I mean, the scale of it is very large. Even if it's forced perspective of some sort, it still looks unusually.
It's huge.
Yeah.
It's a big winged thing. I had my camera at 120 because I was outside to shoot B-roll without a tripod. We're in the city and we don't have permits. So like which isn't a big deal.
Right.
Like, no one's going to say anything. But when we're in the city,
to sort of be touristy.
Right. I typically just try to make it look like I'm there shooting photos or whatever. So I had my camera, but I was shooting at 120, so I didn't need the tripod, so I could keep it somewhat stable. So I was shooting at 120, which turned out to be really good. If I had been shooting at normal frame rate, you probably wouldn't be able to slow it down enough to really get it in frame. But I was shooting at 120, so you can pretty clearly see this thing go overhead. Not overhead. I'm swing. I mean, that's what's so wild is like I swing and try to get it on camera, and by the time I do, it's already down, streaking up into the sky. But in my head, when I replay it, I was watching it. That's something they asked me when we recorded the scene. Is like, were you watching the screen or were you watching the bird? And I was watching the bird, or the winged thing, or whatever. And that's why for the first like 3 seconds, the camera's just like fumbling around through the air. It's because I was trying to see what I was looking at.
It's your Roger Patterson moment.
Yeah. Well, except there were tons of people around, which is really weird because I told you no one else reacted, but it was low when it came through there. It was so low that I felt like if I had jumped up, I could have grabbed it. Like it was that low as it went overhead.
Yeah.
But that's probably just misremembering some of the details. And I couldn't.
It's strange that no one else
reacted whatsoever.
And yet, clearly something was there. It's on film.
Yeah.
It's not like imagination.
Right. So the thing, we haven't cleaned it up professionally. All I did was just so it was usable on the trip, I brightened it on my phone and added a little highlight over it. And I couldn't even, I was keyframing it on my phone where you could follow the highlight so you could see what you were looking at. But I think if we can have someone, even if Santino helps me denoise it, brighten it, I think we can get it way clearer than it is right now.
Mm-hmm.
The good thing is people will accuse us of hoaxing this, but when you see it, I don't think you would have to be very good at doing that to hoax it. Because the camera's swinging all over the place and just keeping the thing in frame would be difficult. Yeah. But it's a pretty crazy video just because we caught something and the way its wings move, really interesting to look at.
Yeah.
And you just watched it on my phone.
Right.
So if I show it to you on a big screen, it's pretty crazy because that's what we were able to do in Indiana, which is where we recorded it. They had this massive room with a huge screen TV, and we actually were able to plug into that and show it on that screen. Cool. So it's pretty.
Yeah.
You can see the hinge in the wings, and that's the interesting thing about it to me.
Maybe it's the vulture.
Yeah.
Spider-Man.
No, it could be anything. It could be MUFON.
Yeah, well, I'm glad you brought that up because you've referenced MUFON a couple of times. What's the MUFON angle?
Okay, so do you remember 2017? The Mothman in Point Pleasant's coming out. All those Chicago reports start popping up, right? Do you remember I was accused of hoaxing them? I was accused of being behind the Chicago Mothman sightings.
Now that you mention it,
asked by multiple people if I was the one that was doing
planting these stories to help sell the film.
That originated with Sam. So Sam, who we interviewed for this movie,
cop to that?
Oh yeah.
Did he really?
He was all about it. Yeah. Sam apparently was the one that told other people you should be asking Seth if Seth's the one doing this. So apparently, there was a push, that we were hoaxing it as part of guerrilla marketing for the Mothman in Point Pleasant. Funny if you've watched the Mothman in Point Pleasant or really any of our movies, because I feel like our movies are so not that. Well, now I say that having just shot a video. Right. But I feel like our movies aren't really that kind of stuff. Like we don't get into like your hottest video evidence or whatever, and especially that movie.
Yeah.
So I feel like if he had seen the movie, he wouldn't have even had that impression to begin with. But yeah, apparently that really originated with them, and from talking to him, it was in all of their reports and things that were flying around MUFON.
Oh my goodness!
Was that it was possible that this originated with me?
Unbelievable. And meanwhile, you had spoken at a MUFON conference, right?
Yeah, in Ohio. I don't know. See, that's what I don't quite get about MUFON is like how connected they are one to another. I'm not really sure, but I'll say this.
Yeah, they're more regional, aren't they? I mean, in their organization, they're more regional than they are national.
So it's split off state by state?
Yeah. Yeah.
So Sam is a super cool guy and hilarious. Really like old school kind of investigator, like wants to know the truth. And that's, at least that is my read on him. So despite the fact he essentially accused me of hoaxing, I have no ill feelings toward the guy. He was so likable and I respect what they're trying to do. This movie made me ask myself a lot of questions, which is not common. Like it made me like Ellie's take on things and Tobias and Emily's and Sam and Jack's, like it all kind of runs counter one to another. And it's interesting to hear all those different perspectives on looking into the paranormal, because it made me question like some of my opinions on this stuff. But I liked every single person we interviewed. There was despite the fact that I feel like it's insane that I wasn't just approached by Sam at some point.
Yeah.
As to like, are you hoaxing this? Because I would have told him no.
Right.
Yeah, there was a lot of they were great interviews, and I feel like Jack and Sam are very likable. We're very likable guys.
Did you get into how MUFON got involved in the first place? Because it doesn't. I mean, it's not.
They took the initial reports, but the initial reports didn't come into this when people think they did, and that's something I am going to save for the movie, because it's not a bombshell, because I think the information's out there, but it is something that's overlooked. So I'm saving I'm saving that. I'll
So
also
they're
say
involved because someone brought it to
the
them.
initial reports were filed with them.
Gotcha.
And there's
somebody didn't know where to take it, or
right.
Okay.
Yeah, we can talk about some of that off
the
record.
Yeah, I mean, it hit me as we're talking. Like, why does MUFON care about Mothman?
They came to them first.
Okay.
So, yeah, I mean, it's a really interesting case. I'm really excited to see it kind of play out for people. I don't know. When we were like, I'm always like trying to compare, well, what kind of movie is this? Like UFO's Dark Sky is like a detective story in my head anyway. And this to me is like our version of an X-Files episode. Yeah. Like that's kind of what it was in my head going into
through
the
on the
filming
poster.
Of it. Yeah.
Sort of.
Yeah. Yeah, it does. And I think I'd actually said that about X-Files to him even back then. But it played out that way in a way I don't think I was expecting it to. Because normally we do that. We'll say something and then that's not at all what we end up with. And this kind of like still felt that way. And there's other stuff that went on. A witness the witness in Indiana, Bob Anderson, really cool, really moving actually story. And I don't want to talk too much about that either because it's such a little surprising witness story.
Is that related to the Diana of the Dunes?
So we interviewed him near her, Diana of the Dunes.
Yeah.
I'm assuming you're aware of all that, having been an Indiana boy, right? Indiana?
I spent some time in Indiana.
Yeah. I wasn't aware of that, but that was a really cool story, which I probably can't even recite now that I'm talking about it. Woman, killed by her husband, right? Yes. Yeah. And now she haunts the area, seen swimming naked occasionally. But it's strange because we went to Indiana Dunes National Park, and they have posters and stuff in the national park that say like Diana of the Dunes and everything. Right. It's kind of cool.
Yeah.
Like they embrace it. Yeah. That area is interesting.
Isn't it? I mean, that's just such a tiny slice of the natural world.
Yes.
Surrounded by urban sprawl.
Yeah. Well,
it's a miraculous thing. They've been able to preserve that.
I definitely want to show you some of the footage at some point because like we did those talking scenes and I know during one of them it's literally Heather and I on a bridge with the Congress Plaza behind us and like the city spilling out. We shot it right downtown. We're on a bridge. They did these telephoto things was kind of like the idea this time is like we're on the bridge but like the shot we were going for this like voyeur kind of like look with the dialogue scenes. But that one and then we went to another place that Bob actually took us to where we were on the shores of Lake Michigan down right on the Indiana border. So you've got Chicago in the distance behind us. Yeah. And that's the shot. It's like we're out at this park talking to each other. That's the final shot. And it's just such a cool dichotomy between like typical STM and that kind of like urban sprawl look. It's just unusual for us. Anything else? Yes. Oh, food. You wanted to mention food.
Please tell me you had some Chicago deep dish.
You're gonna punch me in the head when you find out where we got it. We just got Giordano's.
Well, it's in the city though. I mean, there's a qualitative difference between Giordano's in Chicago and like one of these franchise places.
So
just is a little different.
No one in our group had ever had Chicago style pizza other than me. And so they were like,
goodness.
Yeah. Dave was like, he said he ate 3 pieces just because he felt like he should. And I was like, I couldn't even get through 1.5.
That's a lot.
Like I bought 2 large pizzas and then like mozzarella planks and some cheesy bread. I'm used to ordering like my normal. And I kind of like forget what Chicago style pizza is. Like 1 pizza of Chicago style is equal to like 3 on a normal pizza.
Yeah.
So we had Chicago style pizza. I'm trying to, you know what? We went to a place in Chicago itself, in Chicago proper, called Bar Louie, which is like a chain. I'm aware of this fact, but it was the only place that was allowing more than like 10 people in the place at a time. Yeah. So we just went there and ate, and that place was amazing. Like the food was great. We had like all sorts of appetizers, and that was probably my favorite meal on the whole trip. But other than that, we just kind of went to a Mexican place on the last night there, and then the first night we ate Chipotle. So it wasn't our usual like experiencing the local cuisine kind of trip.
Yeah, the downtown Pizzeria Uno is really good, but that's like
Uno is a chain now too. But my dad and I, we used to do a show every year in Chicago, and him and I always would go to Uno.
Yep.
Yeah, it's good stuff. That might have been where I had my first Chicago style pizza. Actually, beautiful city. I hadn't been there in a long time. I had a very, very fond memory of playing basketball outside of the conference center that we did a book show there with. I kind of forgot about it, but it's down there. I don't know if it's where McCormick Place is now, but there used to be an older conference center that we used to do a book show at every year, and I went out and played basketball one year as a young child.
Yeah, in my undergrad, we'd ride the L train downtown and just go to art galleries and walk around like the whole Magnificent Mile and all that. That was fun times.
Beautiful area.
Yep.
All right, that does it. We're back next week. Peace.
Bye-bye.